Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies. All right, so we're going to talk about another state, another debate, and it's all about slavery. Okay, so we're going to talk about California. Remember the Gold Rush, California, 1849, made it instantly, available and ready to become a state. So in 1850, California winds up joining the Union. It applies for statehood. Now I want you to look, right? It's a 31st state. So prior to you had 15 northern states, 15 southern states, with each had 30 senators. Now, if California comes in, it's going to give two senators. Which, is it going to go to the abolitionist states or the southern states? Okay, that's going to be the key question, the upsetting the balance. All right, so let's go back to the beginning, right? So we have to go back to 1820 before we start talking about 1850, right? You have to remember that after the Mexican American War, we gained all this land, this what we call the Mexican Cession. Okay, so we gained this Mexican Cession, Texas, California, and what are we going to do with this land, right? So this gives us like the California question. Okay, so here's what you have to kind of remember here. All this land that was gained after the Mexican American War, of course, caused a bitter slave dispute. And what we have to deal with, we have to go back to, and you see that little picture right there, the Missouri Compromise of 1820 prohibited slavery above the 3630 line. Now, in this picture right here, you can see the little red line. Oh, let me move this here. You can see this red line going across. That's our slavery scar. That's the result of the Compromise of 1820, the Missouri Compromise. Missouri came in as a slave state. Maine came in as a free state. So this line, if you were to track this line all the way across, since we are a circle, a spherical globe, right, you will see that 3630 line, what does it do to this cession? It really splits it right in half, and especially splits California right in half. So with Polk wanting to extend the nation all the way to the West Coast, that really divided it into what are we going to do. So some leaders wanted popular sovereignty, the idea that political party belongs to the people. And the way that it belongs to the people is you allow them to vote for what they want. So they would be able to vote to ban or allow slavery. Now, this 1820, I've said before, was just a Band-Aid on the issue of slavery. And this Compromise of 1850 also is another Band-Aid. So many Northerners wanted to abolish slavery in all parts of the Mexican Cession. What you have to remember here is slavery was abolished in the North between like 1774 and 1804. So in 1846, they came out with the Willmot proviso, which prohibited slavery in the land from the war with Mexico, the Mexican Cession. It was proposed in Congress, but it was never really enacted. So we've already gone over the sectionalism part, and this sectionalism really starts to come out during the Compromise of 1850. That favoring in the picture right there, the South favoring the South and slavery, and the North, being abolitionist and free states, and then the West right there, this new emerging economy. So in 1848, these Northern abolitionists form a new political party called the Free Soil Party to support the Willmot proviso, hoping that it would pass, but unfortunately it does not pass, and California applies to enter the Union. So far we haven't really gotten into the compromise part. So far we're just getting into the legalities and the backgrounds and, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, right? The North wants them to join as a free state. The South doesn't want them to join as a free state because, it's all about that imbalance and representation in Congress. Now, our government comes up again with what we call a compromise. Remember, our country has been born and has survived on compromises, and this is no difference. This is called the Compromise of 1850, and it's allowing California to come in as a free state. Now, the North gets something and the South gets something, right? And in a compromise, you have to give and you have to take. So you take what you can get, and you can give the rest of the way. Each party has to get something in return. All right, so the North has to give something and it can get something, and vice versa. The South has to give something and it can get something. So let's cover what the North gets. The North gets California entering the Union as a free state. So that's one thing that they wanted. They got it. All right. The other thing that they got is the slave trade, not slavery overall, but the slave trade in Washington, D.C. would come to an end. So the North got two things, and they got the big prize. They got California entering as a free state. So now the imbalance of the Senate favors the abolitionist North. But it's a compromise. What's the South get? They're like, we need something. What are we going to get? We gave you California. Now you need to give us something. And here's what the South gets. And I'm going to cover two kind of smallish ones, and then we're going to get into the big one. So what we have here is Texas could give up the land east of the upper Rio Grande, and in return, the government would pay the debt from Texas of when they were independent republics. So now Texas is going to be debt-free. But the big one here, the big one that we're going to go get into is the Fugitive Slave Law, or the Fugitive Slave Act would be passed, and that would really benefit the South. All right. The last thing that the last big thing, so we're going to say three big sticking points to this compromise. The North gets California as a free state, so it's abolitionist. The South gets the Fugitive Slave Law. And the last big sticking point here is how the rest of the issue of slavery is going to be decided in the Mexican cession. No longer is it 1820 compromise. Above the 3630 line, you're free. Below the 3630 line, you're open for slavery. Now it's, hey guys, you can vote if you want slaves or not. The rest of that federal land of that Mexican cession will be able to decide slavery using popular sovereignty, meaning that the power belongs to the people. They can vote if they want slaves or not. That will rear its ugly head in the Kansas-Nebraska Act. But right now we're sitting here in a compromise at 1850. So let's really get into it. So the North part is easy. They got California. The South gets this Fugitive Slave Law. And what does the Fugitive Slave Law do? Well, it makes it a crime for Northern abolitionists to help runaway slaves. And it allowed these officials to arrest runaway slaves in these free areas. So even though they were able to get to the area and be free, now they can be arrested. Slaveholders can go to the North and collect their escaped slaves or free black persons and incorporate them into the institution of slavery in the South. Slaveholders could also take suspected fugitives to the U.S. commissioners, who were like kind of like judges, who would decide their fate. And the judges, these commissioners, would get they would get money in return for, they would get more money in return for sending a black person into slavery, and instead of setting them free. Let's just say they got $10 to make a black person a slave and only $5 to set them free. Which do you think more judges will do? The fourth and last thing, the real big sticking points of these Fugitive Slave Act, is it made accused fugitives the fact that they cannot testify on their own behalf. So now they couldn't even testify in the court of law. This was really hard to make Northern abolitionists help free slaves coming from the South. The Underground Railroad, the famed Underground Railroad moving north, they really had to keep moving north and north and north. I mean, you had the enforcement was immediate. Thousands of African Americans were fleeing the northern part of the United States and moving to Canada because they were very scared of what could happen, that these Southern slaveholders could literally come up and just pick them out of their freedom and bring them back down to the institution of slavery. Even free people of the North could get picked up and just plucked out and brought into the institution of slavery. It persuaded many Northerners, many abolitionists, Northerners, to join the abolitionist cause. And it's one right here, this Anthony Burns. He was a fugitive. He was a slave in Virginia who was able to actually rent out his work as long as he paid his slaveholder an amount of fees. And actually, Anthony Burns gets on a boat and takes it up north to Boston. And while he's in Boston, he sends a letter to his brother saying, hey, man, I'm in Boston. This is great. You got to come up here. And unbeknownst to him, the slave owner gets a hold of that letter. Well, the slave owner goes back up to Boston. He says, I want my fugitive slave back. And actually, a whole protest, some thousands of people are protesting this, trying to get Anthony Burns to stay in Boston and to not be brought back to the South and reinstituted into slavery. However, this was a law. right? This was passed. So now you have to bring that fugitive back down to the South. So the overall arching thing here is, again, this is just another Band-Aid put on the gushing wound of slavery in the United States. And here's the big sticking points. Again, California wants to come in as a state in 1850, and they do. They apply. The North, because it's a compromise, the North and the South have to get something. The North gets California as a free state. The South gets the Fugitive Slave Law, or the Slave Acts, that, again, has those four really big, let's see if we can go back to them, those four really big points here. A crime to help runaway slaves. Slaveholders can go back and grab their slaves. The commissioners could send them down for more money, and the fugitive slaves could not testify on their own behalf. So the South gets that. And the last thing that we're going to cover here is that popular sovereignty, how slavery is going to be decided in that large federal territory, the Mexican Cession. After this is that these territories, when they become states, they will be able to decide using popular sovereignty, that voting, to see if they want to ban slavery or not.